Alright, here we are at the first top bar hive. Even before we open the hive up, it's a good thing to come and look at the entrance. What we're looking for here is bees coming and going. Now, it's very hard to see from that distance, but I'm looking here, I'm checking if they've got any pollen on their back legs, their pollen pants. There's none obvious right now, but it is only 10 o'clock in the morning while we're filming this. So as the day warms up a little bit, there'll be a bit more activity. We might see some more pollen pants then. I'm also looking on the ground here for any dead bees. I can see there's a couple here, maybe 6 or 7. That's perfect. If I was to see half a cup of dead bees or more on the ground, I'd be very concerned that the bees had been poisoned. And that's not to say that somebody's come in and sprayed some poison inside the hive. That could be that they've gone to a flower that's had some glyphosate or some poison sprayed on that and brought that back to the hive, and they're starting to die off. So I don't see that, but that's a happy sign. Now, some beekeepers will tell you they can tell when a bee comes into the entrance flying low that she's got a honey gut full of honey. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I can't tell whether a bee's coming in low because she's just trying to find the right clearance from the bees coming out, or whether she's coming in low because she's full of honey. I look inside the hive to work out whether or not my bees are bringing in honey. I am starting to see a few pollen pants bees turning up now, so that's a bonus. We'll zoom in on that in a minute. Some top bar hives, if you have them made for you, will come with an observation window. Now, if this is a hive that you're using as a bit of a bed and breakfast, it's a feature point in your house or your garden, by all means, an observation window is really handy. For me personally, I find it's more of a hindrance than anything else. So it's a great place for the huntsmen that live here to hide out behind this wall here. And the perspex tends to stick to the beeswax a bit more. Let's open it up, see what we can find. There you go, there's the huntsman I was talking about. We use our stick and just shoo it away. And now we can see here where the bees are up to in terms of their size of the colony. They're up to about that point there. So we'll close this observation window up now, and then we'll get in and start having a look through the bar. If you're looking to build your own top bar at home, take note, the hinges to the roof are on the same size as the entrance. That way, when you do open your roof, you're standing at the back away from where the bees come and go. When we're working our hives, we're always working them from the sides or the back. That way, we're not interrupting the bees quite so much from the front. Bees tend to protect or guard a 90-degree angle from the entrance of their hive out to about 3 meters. I lovingly refer to that as the kill zone. That's the point where they're going to be the most angry when you don't have the hive open, when you're not doing your inspection. So when you're positioning your hive in your garden or your backyard, you don't want that entrance facing that 90 degrees towards your washing line, your back door, your veranda or your balcony, anywhere that's a high use area for you within about 3 meters. The other thing that's worth noting, all of my hives here are as best as possible facing the rising sun. That way the sun comes up in the morning and it's warming up the colony as early as possible, so they start foraging as quickly as possible. Now that's not always going to be possible. For a commercial beekeeper that's using Langstroth hives, not top bar hives, they'll stick 4 of those on a pallet and each one faces a different way. So only one is going to be facing the rising sun. The point I'm trying to make there is, yes, in an ideal location, the entrance is facing the rising sun, but it doesn't have to be. It all depends on how your location is set up, where your high traffic areas are for you, for your children, for your pets, where your neighbors are and your fences, and then look at the positioning in terms of sunlight after that. All right, let's go around the other side. All right, it's more important for you to see what's happening in this hive than my face. So we're going to aim this as carefully as we can at the bees. It just means you might be seeing my hands and my body. This here is the inside of my top bar hive. All I've done is open it up and I'm now standing at the back. You can see all the bars are in place. There is a gap at the end here, and that's just because I have a follower board here. Normally I would have the bars going all the way to the end, but for this particular hive I've taken a few bars out because I'm raising nucleus colonies, small colonies to populate more top bar hives. That's why I've got a long bar just here. It's this one that I've cut to size. Obviously this one fits in my other colonies better than here, but I just added it in. You can see here this really thin bar protruding out. We call this a shim. So when the bees build honey, normally they make the wax a little bit wider, and having one of those shims makes it easier to pull the frames out, or the bars. So when we looked through that observation window, we knew the bees were up to somewhere about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few bars out here first, and then we're going to work this way. Now, when we come and do our inspections, we don't just take every frame or every bar out of the colony every time we do an inspection. We want to have a plan, a purpose. That way, when we've met our goal, we can close the hive up, and it means that we're disturbing the bees as little as necessary. So today's plan, we want to see, do the bees have enough food? Is there enough honey in this hive? And secondly, I'd like to make sure that the queen is still present. Now, that doesn't mean I need to go and see the queen. If we do find her, bonus. If we see eggs in here, we know the queen has been active in this colony in the last 3 days. It's been 3 weeks since I checked this colony. So if there's eggs in there, I know I didn't kill her the last inspection. Let's go. So these first few bars, they'll slide out nice and easy. What you might be able to see here is that there is a little bit of wax on the top of these bars. That's just to get the bees interested. This one here has had the wax painted on. This one here they've had wax on here before and I've cut it off, leaving just a little bit. Same with that. That way the bees are more likely to build off of these bars. These ones here you can just go to the side for now. Now, as I'm standing here, I'm looking down the hive this way. I'm looking for wax to see if it's attached to the side walls. You can see there's no bars here. No wax on those. They're all empty. We can just slide them across. Now, we've come up to our first bar of wax, and it is black. This bar needs replacing. What's the best way to get these bars out? My preferred method is I put my finger underneath the bar that I want to remove. I put my thumbs on top of the next bar, and that way I'm pushing down with my thumbs and pulling up with my fingers until it loosens. Now, if it doesn't loosen straight away, I can get my hive tool and just come in here and give it a gentle pry. Notice when I'm lifting this bar up, I'm lifting it up nice and straight. Here we have our first bar. What you can see here is a lighter coloured brown followed by a dark brown. What that tells me is the bees have put honey in this top section here. They've used this bottom section for babies, eggs, larvae, brood. These holes here, in winter, this colony did die out. Looks to me like a mouse might have come in here and chewed through some of this wax. Now, at the moment, this bar is nice and light, and I can turn it upside down because I can see that there's no honey in any of these cells. If these cells or these wax holes had honey in it, this would be heavy and I wouldn't be lifting like this. I'd be turning it on an angle to have a look around. I've got black marks on one end of each of my bars. That just tells me which way it goes back in the hive. And I do try and put the bars back in the same order that I took them out. And that way, if the wax is a little bit curved on this side, there'll be an equal opposite curve on the other bar. We'll go to the next bar. Pushing down on the bar after that one, fingers on the bar you want to take up and gently slide it up. And here we go. So this bar here, this is fairly new wax. It's a lighter colour. It's a little bit dark. The bees have been walking on it. But it's much neater and much cleaner than that really black stuff in that bar before. There's nothing really interesting on this bar. So we'll put it back in and we'll keep moving forward. Now I'm just checking this bar here to make sure that there's no wax on it on the sides of the hive, because I can see that there are a few more bees here and I can see honey as well. So I'm going to use my hive tool, just gently come through here on both sides and then lift it up. Here we go. So this bar is interesting. On this side here, what we're looking at, this is all capped honey. Some of the honey has been recently capped. It's got a white wax on it. Some of it has been capped a bit earlier, and so the bees have been walking on the wax and they're making it a darker colour. You might be able to see as well, just here is some uncapped honey. If I turn this bar around, turning it around on the angle, this weighs about 1.5 kilos. And if I hold it this way, depending on how I tilt this, I've got the sun at my back, so the sun is coming this way. You should be able to see into the cells and see the uncapped honey. So how does the honey go from uncapped to capped, and why? Well, the bees go out to the flowers, they grab the nectar, and they come and they put it in these cells here. The nectar has a high moisture content. It varies from flower to flower. Once it's in those cells, the bees start flapping their wings, their evaporative coolers, and that sucks the moisture out of the honey. When the moisture content in the honey gets down to 18% or below, somehow the bees know that it is now ripe. That's when they'll put that layer of wax over the top of it. And by all accounts, that will last forever. Apparently, we're still getting honey out of the pyramids in Egypt. And as scary as what it would be, I'd definitely give it a try. Once the wax capping is removed from the honey is re-exposed to air and potentially moisture. That's when the honey can eventually ferment and go bad. While it's still capped in wax, theoretically it lasts forever. So we've seen there, the bees have 1 bar of honey in this colony at the moment. At this time of year, we're just approaching autumn. I'd like to see probably 5 bars of honey. And this varies depending on your area. So if you're in a warmer climate where the bees can forage on flowers and food all through autumn and maybe even through parts of winter, you might only need 4 bars of honey. In somewhere colder, so we're basically in Canberra, we get the occasional snow during winter, but we definitely get cold days. Temperatures don't get much above 10 degrees, and we have a solid 3 months where the bees really don't go out foraging. So for us, I like to have somewhere between 6 and 8 bars of honey per hive. If I don't have them, then yes, I will feed them up, but I would always rather leave the honey here than take the honey for myself and feed them sugar. Honey is so much better for the bees. So let's keep going. Let's see how much more honey we have in this colony and whether or not we can find the queen. So here we have another frame. What's interesting on this frame, we do have a big chunk of capped honey. We also have some nice new wax, but you can see this wax is starting to twist. Now, while that wax is brand new, it's quite pliable, malleable. We can move it with our fingers. So I can try and straighten it up a little bit. If the bees are in my way, I can just give it a gentle blow and they'll move off. And then I can see where we need to move that wax a little bit. When I'm putting these bars back, generally what I like to do is I like to put the bottom of the bar I'm holding in line with the top of the bar on the hive. That way, if there are any bees, there's less chance of them being squished, and I can slide that bar down and back in it goes. Now, I know I've checked that bar, so I'm going to put it on this side, but at least from your perspective, you can see how that bar goes down nicely. Now, notice at the moment, we've got this much space open in this hive. So from the bees' perspective, what we've done is we've opened up a window in their house. There's a little bit of light here. The temperature change has happened. It's not huge, but it is a difference. you'll notice there's no smoke here. I don't have my smoker on. That's because these bees are fairly calm. I find that my top bar hives need less smoke than my Langstroth hives. And I liken that to opening a window rather than a Langstroth hive. As soon as you lift the lid off, it's like you've lifted the whole roof off your house. Light fills the entire hive. The air and the temperature change happens straight away, and the bees go, "Whoa, what the heck is going on here?" The bees aren't quite so affected in this way because it's a smaller opening that's happening. So that's why I don't have the smoker on. It also helps you to be able to see clearly what's happening. In one of the Langstroth hives, we will get the smoker going, just so I can show you how I like to smoke my bees. But let's keep going. So far it's looking good, but we do need a little bit more honey. So I'm having a look. Is there any wax on the sides? I don't think so. We're going to lift this bar up. All right. So here, I can get rid of this shim. The wax is not that thick. You can see we've got the capped honey up the top again. But this time we have a little bit of uncapped honey. I mean, then we have this brown stuff here. What is this brown stuff? This is capped brood. So, it's important to note here, what the heck is capped brood? So let's take it back a step. The queen comes out, she lays an egg. After about 3 days, that egg falls over, hatches into a larvae. A larvae is a white little grub that looks like it's nice and juicy. It starts off really small, so an egg I describe as a grain of sand, but 100 times smaller. It's really hard to see inside those cells. When the egg hatches, that little larvae is just a little bit bigger than the egg. It is tiny. Over a few days, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. The nurse bees are looking after it, and eventually, at about day 8 or 9, depending on whether it's a female or a male, sometimes it'll be day 10 or 11, that bee or that larvae, it's not yet a bee, will fill the wax cell, and it's a big, plump, white, C-shaped larvae. At that point, it's really easy to see. The bees then come over and they put that brown capping across the top of the cell. That's when we call it capped brood. The bee, or the larvae at this stage, will liquefy its body and transform into a bee, much the same as a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Depending on whether it's a female or a male, it takes somewhere between sort of 19 and 24 days from when that bee is laid as an egg to when it emerges out of that capped brood. It will chew its way out of the cell and emerge as a bee. Now, a new bee, or matish, is quite distinguishable from older bees. Just behind its eyes, it's got a bit of a furry patch, and it is lighter in colour. It will lose that furry patch over time. They are also just a little bit smaller. So this is that bar again, and we're just trying to have a look to see if we can see any baby bees here, any young bees that have just hatched. So a bee like this here, just here, has a lot of fur behind it, so it's probably a new bee compared to some of these other bees that have lost their fur behind their eyes. If we turn this around on the other side, we've got a little bit more capped brood, and we actually have a bee emerging just down here.
Let's see if I can bring that up nice and close for you. Just here. Now we know these are all girls because all this capped brood is nice and flat. If they were male bees, that capped brood would be a bit rounded. Can you hear the change in sound for those bees? That higher pitch indicates that they're a little bit agitated, not as calm as they were a couple of minutes ago. Now that's not a big deal right now because it's only a few bees that are in that state. You can see the other bee there is helping get rid of some of that wax. We're still looking down in this area here. Here she is, starting to stick her head out of the cell. Here she comes. There she goes. Notice the fuzz on the back behind her eyes. And that's her just there. Just here. That big furry patch is a brand new bee. Let's put her back in the hive so she can get acquainted with her sisters. Here we have another bar with lots of capped brood. This is a really nice pattern here. We see we've got a little bit of capped honey up the top here, some uncapped honey here. And interestingly, this little bit here was just stuck to the wall. So we take that wax off. That's what we call burr comb. Wax where we don't want it. Now I've got a bucket behind the camera with a lid on it. I'll put that wax in there in a minute. So we're looking for this nice solid brood pattern. Most cells are filled with brood. If this was reversed and all the empty cells were the only cells filled with capped brood, we might be concerned that our queen is not laying effectively. Now it could be that all of the bees are hatching except for the last few little stragglers, but if you notice that on every single frame, that'd be an indication that your queen might be time to be replaced. So there's not a huge amount of honey on this frame, but there is lots of capped brood. So let's see if we can find some more eggs or larvae. Wax here for now. It's a good time to remind you about your biosecurity requirements. We're not allowed to leave wax or honey out for the bees to clean up. That's a great way of spreading diseases up to 5 kilometers. Make sure you're complying with your biosecurity requirements and you've got your bucket, your jar, your tub, anything. I like to use an ice cream container with a nice easy peel on peel off lid. The plastic makes it easy for me to cut the wax out and drop it in the freezer as well. And we do have our queen on this bar. Let me get my trusty hive tool. Have you seen her yet? Let me talk you through what's on the bar and then I'll point her out. Right here we've got our capped honey again. We've then got some uncapped honey underneath, some capped brood. This is our queen right here. Notice her wings halfway down her body. I'm going to put this bar back nice and quickly so that the wax doesn't fall off and smash onto the ground. All right, this is another heavy bar. So I'm just going to have a look. Because we saw the queen on the other frame, I'm hoping we might be able to see some eggs. No. Might have to show you some eggs in one of the other hives. What I can show you, we've got our capped honey here. Some uncapped honey, that's the glistening stuff just underneath it. And then we've got some pollen here with a few rogue capped brood cells and brood over here. Now this pollen, is all of a similar color, that sort of pale yellow. Pollen can range from nearly black to orange to yellow to red, purple, quite a variety of colors. It just depends on what flowers are blooming at the time that the bees are on them. So we'll put that back gently. I don't want to put that right up against this bar here because I know the queen was on this bar and I really don't want to squish it. We'll check one more bar just to make sure there is a good amount of honey here. At this point I'm happy, but we will do one more just in case. Here you go. So again, we've got our capped honey, a little bit of capped honey, lots of pollen, and some capped brood here. We spin it around this way. Wondering if you can see this bee here just doing her little waggle dance with her pollen pants. Another one here with pollen pants. If I give this bar a nice blow, the bees move out of the way. They don't particularly like our breath. Alright, so these bees have a good amount of pollen and a good amount of honey. There's probably at least 4 bars of honey here and we haven't checked it all. So I don't need to go through and disturb all the bees here. I've seen the queen, even though I didn't see eggs, and they've got enough food. We've met our hive inspection goals. I can shut this up and move to the next colony. When I'm shutting it up, I'm bringing all the bars back in the same order, trying my best to squish as few bees as possible. So lining it up, the bottom of the bar I'm holding, with the top of the bar next to me. When I'm confident I don't have any more bees in the way, I can slide that down. No bees in the way. Slide it down again. It's not essential to have this shim in today, but I will put it back just in case. And that way I don't lose it as well. Now all the bees have moved, I can slide that back down. And because this part of the hive is on an angle here, it's a very small point that the bar sits on. So the bees are less likely to be squished compared to the Langstroth frames that sit flush on the lip of the hive, and that bees can be squished quite easily there. So now these three bars are all sufficiently close together. I can move all three of these at once. I'm actually going to go 4 because my fingers allow it. It's got one bee there, I can see, there she goes. Whoops. So that's a good reminder that bees don't like vibrations. So I dropped those bars. The vibration upset the bees. You might have heard their pitch increase, made it louder. They weren't happy. The rest of these bars have no bees in them, so I can put those empty ones on top here. Now, if this was early on in the season, which for us, just outside of Canberra, our season starts mid to late September, runs through until end of March, middle of April. If the colony is expanding, how do I help it grow? The best thing that you can do is when you come and do your inspections, grab 1 or 2 empty bars and give them a bit more room up this end where the entrance is. So I take an empty bar, I put it between 2 bars that have nice straight wax already drawn out on it, stick it in the middle. You can imagine that these 2 bars have the straight wax all the way down, and then this middle bar is my new wax. These here, they act as guides for this bar here. Bees have that 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch bee space rule. So if this is nice and straight, they've got no choice but to build straight on this bar here. And that's the easiest way to keep them building straight wax. If I had these 3 bars and they were all empty, and I just put them at the end where the wax finishes, what might happen is, instead of building straight, they might build the wax a little bit curved. And then the next one, they keep that 1 centimeter of space and curve it a bit more. And then by this one, they're actually doing almost semicircles and they're attaching onto more than 1 bar. We're not meeting our biosecurity obligations there of all frames need to be removable and inspectable. You need to be able to see every cell on those frames. So if we had those semicircles of wax attaching more than 1 bar, we're not meeting our biosecurity obligations because you can't check all the cells on both sides of each bar because the 2 bars are stuck together. When that happens, you need to come through and separate. It might be a case of it's easier just to cut the wax straight off the bar, get the bees to start again. That's why I don't like putting 3 empty bars at the end. I like to space out a single bar between already built wax. Makes it easier for the colony to build straight up. It's less work for you. So with all these bars in, that's my little bit of wax that's going to go in my bucket. It's time to close the roof. One thing to note with your top bars, depending on how much space is between your roof line, your bars may stop it from closing. So in this instance, that closed perfectly, but you may have an instance where a bar sticks out and your roof doesn't quite shut. It's just resting on those bars there. You might just need to use your hive tool or your fingers, tap them back, and the roof will close easily. There you go. We've just inspected our first hive. We didn't have to go through every single bar. We saw our queen, we saw that there was enough food. This colony is all set. We can come back again and do another inspection in 2 or 3 weeks. Let's go have a look at one of the Langstroth or the long lang hives now.